Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 20th of April. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now has 2 more weeks to form a government after today receiving permission from President Reuven Rivlin to formally extend the 28-day period he was given to build a coalition following his election victory in March. Here with more is IBA's political correspondent Eli Wogelenter.
Prime Minister Netanyahu will now have until May 6th to build a coalition after not succeeding in finalizing a deal with any party through the first 4 weeks of negotiations. With no coalition agreement signed, Netanyahu asked President Rivlin this morning for a 2-week extension in which to complete the task of forming a government. The two spent 35 minutes discussing coalition issues before emerging from their huddle to make the briefest of statements to the media. "We've moved forward and we're well on our way," said Netanyahu, "but more time is needed to make sure the government is a stable one and to reach agreement on a number of important issues that will enable us to tackle the challenges facing the State of Israel." Rivlin pushed for a swift conclusion to the coalition negotiations, saying the nation as a whole is eager for a government that can make decisions. The public sees an interim government as something that must be corrected. "I wish you success in establishing a stable government for the State of Israel in the coming days." One of the parties holding up a coalition is Bayit Yehudi. Chairman Naftali Bennett posted a tweet last night saying his party will end coalition negotiations if Netanyahu decides to appoint Shas Chairman Aryeh Deri as Religious Services Minister. "Unilaterally taking the religious services portfolio from religious Zionism and giving it to Shas is the end of the negotiations with Bayit Yehudi," he wrote. Likud party whip and negotiator Zev Elkin criticized Bennett this morning, saying the party will not be cowed by threats. "Every party received offers that answer to their needs, including Bayit Yehudi," said Elkin. "I don't believe that negotiating through threats and other means is appropriate." Likud sources said Netanyahu still hoped to complete deals with Kulanu, Shas, and UTJ by the time Remembrance Day starts tomorrow evening. Should Netanyahu fail to form a coalition in 2 weeks' time, Rivlin can assign another party leader to the task, again with a 28-day deadline. If that fails, he can select a third person who has just 14 days to complete the task. And if that does not work, then the president calls a new election. Erin?
Thanks for that report. In other news, the Haifa municipality continued to block the entrances of refineries in the city's bay for a second day following a report from the Ministry of Health revealing that half of the child residents suffering cancer contracted the disease because of the high level of air pollution. The industries are fighting back and removed the municipal trucks with cranes. After Haifa Mayor Yonah Yahav signed closure orders for 4 of the factories, residents of several nearby communities joined in by staging a protest in front of the Carmel Chemicals plant in Atlit, demanding it be moved far away from major population centers. While holding signs, they shouted that they will not let the residents of their city get cancer too, and several vowed to move out of the town if the refineries are not closed. There's been a great deal of trading accusations over responsibility for the situation, with residents blaming the municipal officials, who in turn are blaming the national government. Atlit Councilman Oren Oded is vowing that one way or the other, the Carmel Chemicals plant will be moved and that commercial and residential housing will take its place. The Women of the Wall organization today celebrated a landmark victory with the reading of a full-size Torah scroll during the traditional service marking the start of the Hebrew month of Iyar. Male supporters of the group smuggled the parchment across the divide that separates male from female worshippers at the Western Wall in Jerusalem's Old City. The women's group has struggled for nearly 25 years to attain full social and legal rights at the site, including prayer, the wearing of prayer shawls, and collective reading from the Torah out loud. The Jerusalem District Court handed down a precedent-setting ruling granting women the right to read in the holy area 2 years ago, although regulations ban the bringing in of outside materials that have so far prevented them from openly doing so. While male worshippers at the site are provided with the use of some 100 Torah scrolls, the chief rabbi of the Western Wall, Shmuel Rabinovitz, has banned women from taking any into their section. The Women of the Wall spokeswoman, Naama Peled, told IBA News that the man suspected of passing the women the Torah today, Charlie Kalish, remains in detention at this hour, and his requests for medical attention were delayed for many hours after he sustained a head injury during questioning. In what appears to be harsh criticism of the state, the High Court of Justice today gave the government 4 months to explain why it is holding agricultural land in a northern Jordan Valley that belongs to Palestinian farmers. The 1,000 dunams were confiscated in 1967 from Nablus owners for security reasons soon after the Six-Day War, but later transferred to Israelis for their own agricultural benefit. The High Court justices are ordering the state to provide an explanation as to why Israeli farmers are allowed to cultivate the land, while the legal Palestinian owners have been banned from doing so. The ceremonial placement of an Israeli flag at each grave of those who gave their lives in defense of the state, interred at official army cemeteries or the military sections of others, will be completed by the start of Remembrance Day for fallen soldiers at 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot participated in the annual service at the Mount Herzl National Cemetery yesterday. This year, 23,320 troops and other security personnel who fell in the line of duty will be honored. Citizens are selected each year to light torches at the Eve of Independence celebrations in recognition of their significant contributions to the state. Ahead of Wednesday night's ceremony marking 67 years of Israel's independence, this year's honorees spent the morning at the Knesset preparing for their appearances, where two took a quick break to offer their reflections to IBA's Margot Dudkevich.
The Israelis chosen represent breakthroughs in almost every field of human endeavor. They include Brigadier General Reserve Dr. Danny Gold, who developed the Iron Dome missile defense system, one of the most high-profile breakthroughs in the field of national security. Supermarket king Rami Levy, Israeli singer and songwriter Avihu Medina, Alice Miller, who paved the way for female pilots in the Air Force after taking her case to the High Court of Justice when she was initially rejected to join the course, and former Mossad employee Seema Shine, whose nomination has been shrouded in controversy by former and present Mossad officials, who deemed the choice inappropriate. Lucy Arish, the Israeli Arab news presenter on I-24 News, said after getting over the initial shock of being chosen to light a beacon, it was upsetting to discover that Knesset members and officials from the Israeli Arab sector didn't even bother to call her and congratulate her.
I got a lot of phone calls from a lot of Israeli ministers and parliament members. I didn't get one phone call from any Israeli Arab representative in the Knesset. I didn't get one phone call. So they're good with giving critiques, and they're good with saying that I'm a traitor, and they're good with saying that she doesn't understand anything from her life, and she doesn't understand anything, and she is filthy, and she is 100 and million things. But I never got any support from you. Not even one day in my life. And not that I need the support, but sometimes it's nice to hear a good word.
Gal Lusky, who founded the non-governmental organization Israel Flying Air, that provides humanitarian assistance to countries stricken by natural disasters and conflicts, including places where Israel has no diplomatic ties, said she was honored when asked to light an Independence Day beacon.
So Israeli Flying Aid deals with disasters and conflicts in both countries who do not allow the entry of life-saving aid into their territories and in countries that do not have diplomatic relations with Israel. It's a real NGO in a real democracy.
Australia and Iran have agreed to share intelligence in efforts to track foreign fighters joining the Islamic State. The new policy was announced by Canberra's Foreign Minister Julie Bishop upon completion of her trip to Tehran, where she met with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, as well as her counterpart Mohammad Javad Zarif. This was the first such trip by an Australian minister in more than a decade. Bishop said that the agreement to share information comes because of Iran's long relationship and strong military presence in Iraq, as well as its sophisticated intelligence network in locations that Canberra has no presence. More than 100 Australian citizens are estimated to have joined jihadist forces in Iraq and Syria, heightening concerns about the threat they pose after they return home. Another ship filled with immigrants ran aground off the coast of Rhodes today, killing 3, while more than 90 others were rescued. This latest tragedy at sea comes as international rescue efforts continue off the coast of Libya in search of other migrants aboard a boat that capsized south of the Italian island of Lampedusa yesterday. As many as 700 people are feared to have died in that wreck when the 20-meter-long vessel sank. Helicopters have joined Navy vessels, patrol boats, and merchant ships from several nations in the hunt for survivors, which is being coordinated by the Italian Coast Guard in Rome. So far, 28 people have been found alive, and 28 bodies have been recovered. An estimated 20,000 illegal migrants managed to reach the country's coast this year, while 400 others, also coming from Libya, drowned in a similar incident just last week. If the expected fatality rate of the latest disaster is confirmed, it will bring the death toll of those who've lost their lives while trying to reach Europe to 1,500 this year alone. The foreign policy chief of the European Union says that the 28 EU member states have a moral duty to tackle the migrant crisis and that they're now considering the holding of a summit on the matter.
After what happened in the Mediterranean the day before, the night before the previous one, I felt it was our moral duty to concentrate also on our responsibility as Europeans to prevent this kind of tragedies to happen again and again. Let me say that the main issue here is to build together a common sense of European responsibility on what is happening in the Mediterranean, knowing that there is no easy solution, there is no magic solution, but there is a responsibility that we have to exercise together as Europeans and in a consistent and coherent way.
The spiritual leader of the world's Anglicans visited Egypt to pay his respects to the Coptic Christians amid heightened persecution of the tiny minority community. Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, made his appeal for greater protection and tolerance during meetings with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the Anglican Bishop of the Arab Republic, Munir Anis, the Coptic Pope, Tawadros II, and the Grand Imam of Al-Ashar, Sheikh Ahmed al-Tayyib. The visit came just as the Islamic State released a video of the shooting and beheading of 30 Ethiopian Christians in Libya, the radical Sunni Muslim group referred to as Crusaders. 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians were also beheaded by the Islamic State terrorists in Libya last February. At a ceremony marking the 70th anniversary of the liberation of the Sachsenhausen concentration camp, German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier spoke out against any kind of discrimination and xenophobia. He also spoke of his government's obligation to educate the younger generation about the horrific crimes committed by the Nazis in Germany's name. As he reminded his audience that those atrocities cost millions of lives, Steinmeier called on German citizens and everyone around the world to face and not forget history. Soviet and Polish troops liberated the camp in 1945, which had been in existence since 1936. It's not known how many people were murdered there because all of the inmates were not officially registered by the Third Reich. As part of their efforts to destroy evidence of their war crimes, the Nazis forced their captives onto brutal death marches away from the site just days before Allied troops liberated the camp. One survivor, now living in Israel, spoke of his purpose in returning to Sachsenhausen for the memorial.
In this camp, I was imprisoned in 1944, in March 44, but I had already spent 2 years in a concentration camp in Norway. So I was 17 years old when I was arrested. I come very often here. I bring Norwegian youth to this camp and tell them about the things that happened here in order to avoid a new war.
Elections in the Turkish sector of Cyprus will have to undergo a runoff vote between the top two candidates next week after none of the 7 who ran in yesterday's elections managed to attain a majority. The hardline incumbent, Dervish Orolu, garnered 28.18% of the ballots, edging out independent challenger Mustafa Ikinci by just 1 percentage point. 62% of the 177,000 voters turned out to cast their ballots to determine who will represent them in next month's talks with Greek Cypriot President Nitsos Anasiades, aimed at reunifying the ethnically divided island. Cyprus has been split since 1974, when Turkey invaded the north after supporters of a union with Greece launched a coup. Ankara deploys more than 30,000 troops in the area that it calls Turkish Cyprus, which remains unrecognized by the international community. 99% of the population are Sunni Muslims. Cyprus is 77% Greek and became a member of the European Union in 2004. Akinci is the former mayor of Nicosia, who campaigned with an olive branch as his symbol, saying that the members of both sides share suffering and that it's time to live in peace.
This is the beginning of for the new negotiations, and we hope that Mr. Akinci his aims is to solve the Cyprus problem and to join the island to one section, and we will have a united island for the Greek Cypriots and for the Turkish Cypriots.
Israel Prize winner Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein passed away this morning at the age of 81. The leader of the Zionist modern Orthodox Judaism was born in Paris but raised in the United States and served as the head of the prominent Har Etzion Yeshiva in the Alon Shavut settlement where he lived. Lichtenstein maintained a bold Jewish worldview that embraces modernity within the framework of orthodoxy. Here's what he had to say about the halachic issue of organ donations.
Because if one accepts brain death as death, then the organs can be removed in very short order while they're still vital, still functioning, and before they degenerate. A position which is taken by the chief rabbinate of Israel, who do recognize brain death as death. The father, Joseph Jessner, was open to the possibility. And I said to him, this is an issue with regard to which I was not going to tell him, do this, do that. He should know the different views and take that into consideration. What I very much encouraged him was that whatever indeed is defined as death, and if indeed one acknowledges and recognizes brain death as death, then I thought that donation of organs was not only permissible, but a very desirable option, because one could then possibly be saving other lives and enriching and enhancing the quality of life for other people who at present are in dire straits.
Rabbi Lichtenstein's funeral procession will set out tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock from the Har Etzion Yeshiva, traveling to the Har Menuchot Cemetery in Jerusalem for burial services. Well, it's time to get your swimming suits, at least officially, because beach season opens today. The Ministry of the Interior announced that the 140 coastal areas are now under the supervision of lifeguards, including 93 along the Mediterranean, 27 on the Sea of Galilee, 16 on the Dead Sea, and 4 on the Red Sea. The ministry is stepping up its campaign to keep swimmers safe this season by asking them to obey all the rules, stressing that 90% of drownings occur in areas that have been determined to be off limits for swimmers, or the lifeguards and other emergency personnel were off duty, or because the swimmers entered the seas while intoxicated. Taking a look at local finance, the shekel today increased in strength against all major foreign currencies, as were share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team says we're going to see a significant drop in temperatures to more seasonal levels tomorrow, accompanied by a rise of humidity and hazy conditions due to strong winds in the south. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. This reminder before leaving you that we hope you'll join us again tomorrow at 6:30, which is our special broadcast time due to the screening of the names of terror victims on this channel ahead of Memorial Day on Wednesday, when we will not have a broadcast. And in place, the names of each of the soldiers who fell in defense of the nation will be shown. I'm Erin Viner wishing you a good evening. Hope to see you tomorrow at 6:30. Shalom from Jerusalem.